They have it all, wooden villas hidden among New England pine forests. A 40th floor penthouse in the heart of Shanghai, a data system that controls hundreds of thousands of processes every day, billions of dollars in operations run with a single nod. But then, just one glance, one message, one wrong hug, and the empire begins to crumble. From Andy Byron, the engineer who couldn't code, who held the reins of Astronomer, worth over $1.2 billion, to Jiang Fan, the man who changed how China spends money, they share one thing in common. The more they control the world, the less they control themselves. Let's explore the hidden truths behind the spotlight that may surprise you and make you rethink the meaning of success. Andy Byron, the engineer who didn't know how to code and the billion-dollar data empire. Andy Byron did not grow up surrounded by silicon circuit boards or programming classes. His childhood home was on a quiet street in Ohio with no computers, just an old TV, a few business books his father left behind, and quiet family dinners. How did a boy who wasn't good at math become the man behind hundreds of thousands of data processes every day? Andy Byron did not grow up surrounded by circuit boards or programming classes. His childhood home was in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood in the US, where dinner was the only time the family sat down together to talk about the day instead of the future. His father was a salesman, his mother an art teacher. No one in the family ever dreamed that one day their son would head one of the world's most powerful data empires. But there was one thing Andy learned early on: to change the world, you don't have to be the best at something, you just have to be the best people listen to. How did a boy who wasn't good at math become the man behind hundreds of thousands of data processes every day? No prestigious degree from Stanford, no coding skills. But Andy Byron had something that silenced entire boardrooms: the ability to read people's minds and control them. Over the course of more than 20 years, he moved through tech companies like Cybereason and Lacework, not as a software architect, but as the captain steering ships through data storms. Every time he appeared, a startup on the brink of collapse would suddenly revive, and a company that seemed lost would unexpectedly secure hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. Is this just luck? Or is it a skill possessed only by those who don't seek the spotlight? When Andy became CEO of Astronomer in 2023, there were no grand press conferences or flashy LinkedIn posts. He quietly took his seat at the helm, and within just a few months, the company was processing over 100,000 data workflows daily for giants like Adobe, Nielsen, and Rappi. Astronomer was quickly valued at over $1.2 billion, and he was dubbed the most formidable engineer who doesn't know how to code of his time. Have you ever wondered, does real power come from applause, or from control that no one sees? Andy Byron's estimated net worth is between $25 and $40 million, mostly from shares in companies he helped navigate chaos to reach the top. But no one knows the exact figure, because most of the value comes from companies he quietly and strategically involved himself in without needing to appear in the media. For him, wealth isn't about being seen, but about being able to do things others dare not. Do truly wealthy people need to be known? Andy didn't invent technology. But he was the one who decided which technologies would survive and which would fade away. Decisions made in his office, seemingly small, could cause a company to vanish or become the next unicorn. So, in your opinion, who truly holds power in the modern world? Leave your thoughts below. He controls an entire empire without uttering a word. But what about the people living alongside him? The secretive but powerful life of the Andy Byron family. The Andy Byron family is unlike any wealthy tech family you've ever heard of. They don't live in Silicon Valley. They don't check in at resorts in the Maldives. They don't post photos of their private helicopters on Instagram. Instead, they've chosen a quiet, refined lifestyle where every decision, every space, and every habit is a subtle statement of true class and power. Why would someone who doesn't need to show off control an entire global data empire? His wife, Lena Byron, was once a promising photographer who could have become a familiar face in the fashion world or graced the covers of dozens of prestigious magazines. But she chose a different path. She turned away from the spotlight, opting instead for the real light that can only be captured through an analog lens and documentary film. She lives in a coastal house, surrounded by salty winds and pine forests, where her studio is a glass-roofed attic, flooded with sunlight in the morning like a golden curtain. There, Lena develops film by hand, each frame a world of its own. She doesn't sell her work. She stores them in wooden boxes, like mementos of an era when images still had a soul. Does true art need to be seen by others? Their daughter Evie is another surprise. She doesn't like parties or social media. Evie has been fascinated by astronomy since she was very young. At 14, she applied for an internship at NASA. Not to show off, but because she really wanted to understand what the data from the stars was saying. At night, she sits on the rooftop with her own telescope, a birthday gift from her parents, recording the movements of distant stars that most people never notice. How far can a child who grows up in silence see? On Sunday evenings, the three of them have dinner in their wooden house in Massachusetts. There is no TV. There are no phones. Only the light from the fireplace and the sound of quiet conversation filled the room. Andy talked about the data streams he had just coordinated for a global company. Lena talked about the strange light in a photo she had taken in Maine. Evie talked excitedly about the signals from a dying star. No one interrupted. Each person spoke as if continuing a long story that never needed to end. They didn't need noise to prove their uniqueness. While others flaunted their luxury cars and expensive watches, the Byrons lived for things that made others silent. An original print of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue hung in the library. A rare recording of Richard Feynman. A collection of ancient astronomy books, locked in a special temperature-controlled room. No one outside the family has ever stepped inside. And when Andy moves between cities, he doesn't choose noise either. In Boston, he drives a black Audi AL that is unremarkable but sturdy. When he goes to the beach with his family, he uses a white Range Rover. And sometimes, on early spring mornings, he would drive his classic green Porsche 911 just to hear the engine sound as if he were listening to himself. So what is power? Is it what everyone sees, or what only a few people know? People say he has a 40th floor penthouse in New York that is not registered in his name and is managed through a trust fund. The apartment does not appear in any public records, but everything in it is arranged according to a unique logic, simple, precise, and utterly discreet. No one in that family creates data, but they are shaping how the world sees, stores, and perceives data. They do not live to impress. They live to observe, to control silently, intelligently, and without ever needing applause. In an increasingly noisy world where everyone wants to be known, perhaps real power belongs to those who are quiet enough to control everything without anyone seeing. So who do you think is in control? The one who appears or the one who controls the stage lights? They are silent, but every decision they make causes the entire tech world to take a step back, until the camera turns toward them. A hug, a glance, and a career vanishes. But that's not the hardest fall we've ever seen. The price of a hug when CEO Andy Byron slips from the top with a single swipe. They were once the ideal family in the tech world, discreet, wealthy, and unassuming, yet admired by all. Andy Byron was a respected CEO, Megan was a stay-at-home mom caring for their twin sons in a wooden mansion in the New England suburbs. They had their own routine, Sunday dinners, and peaceful vacations that no one knew about. For them, the world was a place where data needed to be controlled and emotions should remain intact within the walls of their home. But it all changed in an instant, a camera angle, and everything fell apart. That night at the Coldplay concert, the crowd cheered under the stage lights. The Kiss Cam, the usual cheerful screen, scanned the couples. When the camera paused on the VIP section, thousands laughed at the image of two people hugging tightly. But a few hours later, the laughter turned to shock. The man was Andy Byron, the billionaire CEO of Astronomer. The woman? Not his wife. It was Christine Cabot, the company's human resources director. The video went viral. Chris Martin of Coldplay joked, "Are they in love, or are they hiding something?" And social media exploded. The hashtag KissCamGate trended. Every frame was dissected, the eye contact, the distance, the way Andy awkwardly leaned in. In just one night, the CEO who once managed 100,000 data processes a day was now being controlled by data. The next morning, an emergency meeting was called. Andy Byron took a leave of absence. Christine was suspended. The atmosphere in the company froze like a buggy line of code waiting to be fixed. Investors asked who would control the organizational culture when the CEO and HR director were both embroiled in scandal. What about Megan? She deleted all family photos online. The kitchen, once warm with candlelight, was now filled with the cold silence of emptiness. Megan didn't say a word. She didn't cry in front of the press. But a former employee said Megan called HR when Andy was stressed about the investment trajectory, just to send a few words of thanks to the employees. And now it is HR that is fueling the scandal. The office is as quiet as it has never been without Andy. His name has been removed from Slack. His office is closed. No one mentions the KPIs anymore. Employees still come to work, but they no longer talk about the founder. They only ask each other if Andy did that to his family, how loyal would he be to the company? And Andy? He disappeared. In the wooden house where he once brainstormed ideas for Astronomer, Andy sat writing and tearing up apology letters. He didn't speak. He didn't defend himself. He was just silent. The entire system paused for a moment. That email didn't salvage his reputation, but it caused hundreds of employees to open their emails and write just 2 words, "Thank you." So what would you do if a moment of emotion destroyed the empire you once believed was perfect? Perhaps what haunts us most about this story isn't the kiss, it's the silence that followed. The silence of a man who once controlled hundreds of thousands of processes with data, but couldn't control a fleeting moment of emotion. The silence of a wife who once called HR to thank them for supporting her husband, only to later watch that same department become the center of scandal. And the silence of an entire company, one that once saw Andy as a visionary leader, now quietly deleting his name from Slack, closing his office door, and moving forward as if he were never there. We often believe technology can keep everything in order. But in the end, what brings down an empire isn't a system crash, it's the one thing you can't code, human emotion. No one was prepared for that moment. A kiss cam. A hesitant glance. A choice that was personal, yet unraveled everything public. The real question isn't what Andy did. It's whether we ever truly know the people we admire or if we only know the version they present to the world. And if a single moment can dismantle everything we thought was perfect, maybe it's time we redefine what perfect even means and ask ourselves how much of it was real and how much was simply a carefully constructed illusion we chose to believe. It wasn't just Andy Byron. On the other side of the world, another person also fell and never got back up. Jiang Fan, from commerce king to quiet departure. Jiang Fan wasn't born into wealth. He didn't grow up surrounded by technology or power. His childhood home was in an old apartment complex in Hangzhou, where every morning was filled with the sound of wooden clogs, street vendors, and the scent of jasmine tea wafting through narrow windows. His parents were ordinary civil servants. No one stood out, but there was one thing deeply ingrained in the young boy's subconscious from a young age: to change his life, he had to study. There were no shortcuts. There were no miracles. And Jiang Fan studied. He studied to forget hunger. He studied to forget the winters without warm blankets. And then he was admitted to Fudan University, the dream of millions of Chinese students. But even when he stepped into that prestigious campus, he was still different from the rest. He studied engineering but was passionate about economics. He studied user behavior and how people make decisions. In 2006, he had an unusual dream. One day, people would shop without stores, without cash, just using their phones. At the time, everyone laughed. But 10 years later, the entire country of China would be living in his dream. From an ordinary student to a person who changed the nation's consumer behavior. Can you believe it? In 2007, Jiang Fan joined Alibaba. At the time, Alibaba was not yet an empire. But he didn't just see the present, he saw the future. He didn't shout loudly. He didn't make grand speeches. But he was the man quietly standing behind the giant e-commerce system. When Singles Day became the world's biggest shopping day, he was the one who ordered the system to run smoothly, every second, every click. Under his leadership, billions of yuan circulated like stars on a digital chart. The media dubbed him the uncrowned king of digital commerce. Jack Ma trusted him as his successor. and investors saw him as the perfect symbol of the next generation of leaders. As his career flourished, his life took on a different hue. Jiang Fan lived in a penthouse in Shanghai, where the city's lights reflected off the ceiling like an artificial ocean at night. On weekends, he flies to his resort villa in Sanya, where the sky is so blue that it seems unreal. His garage is filled with luxury cars, including a Porsche Panamera and a Mercedes S-Class. His international business trips are made on private jets, unpretentious but enough to let people know who he is. He married Dong Hopeyua Hoa, an elegant, quiet woman who stood behind him like a shadow that never faded. They had 2 children, a family that many envied, and everything seemed perfect. But what do you think? When you have everything, fame, power, family, what else is there? Then she appeared, Zhang Daiji, a name that seemed to belong only to social media. But she entered real life like a wave. She is not an actress. She is not an heiress. But she is a living empire. From being an early hot girl on Weibo, she built her own fashion brand and led the trend of live streaming sales, an industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Every time she goes live, tens of thousands of people wait. She doesn't sell products. She mesmerizes. And she's beautiful. A beauty that needs no explanation. People say they met during a collaboration. Then we became close. Then a photo from the same time in Tokyo. A luxury car parked outside her house at midnight. A leaked chat from Alibaba's internal network. All of it remains speculation, until his wife speaks up. In April 2020, Dong Hua posts a single message on Weibo. It's short, it doesn't accuse, but it's as clear as a knife. She calls Zhang Daiji the third wheel who doesn't know her place. The post was like a bomb. The media pounced. Alibaba shareholders grew anxious, and the online community split. One side felt sympathy. The other was furious. Alibaba immediately launched an internal investigation. And within days, Jiang Fan was removed from the exclusive strategic partner circle, a closed circle only accessible to those handpicked by Jack Ma. No press conference. No farewell. Only an elevator took him down from the 18th floor of Alibaba's headquarters, where he once sat directing the nation's e-commerce industry. Have you ever seen an empire collapse because of a post less than 300 words long? What about Zhang Daiji? From a symbol of female independence and success, she became a name to be shunned. Brands canceled contracts. Live streams were canceled. Stock prices plummeted. She once said in a video, "I can lose everything, but I don't want to lose that person." But that person had nothing left to hold onto. Today, no one knows where Jiang Fan is. No statements, no comeback, no rebuttals. Only a few people have seen him appear at the international airport alone, wearing a mask, without an assistant. No more penthouse. No more business cards. No more deals worth billions. A man who once made all of China shop in just a few minutes can now even afford a second chance for himself. If one day you have everything, glory, influence, a perfect wife, but your heart is still cold, would you trade it all to feel alive again? Or would you hold on to what you have and live in silence forever? There are mistakes that do not come from ambition but from the desire to feel alive, to be seen, to be loved. But the price to pay for a minute of true life is a lifetime of not being able to return. Jiang Fan used to be the ideal model for millions of people, poor but rising up, silently but changing the whole country. He is not the villain in a bad story. He is just a man lost in the dream he built. The technology world once considered him the brain, and his wife the heart. But when the brain missed a beat, the heart no longer wanted to wait. And the audience, the people who once cheered for him, also turned away as quickly as they had come. Now, in a corner of the airport when all the lights are off, Jiang Fan may still be wondering, if I could do it again, what would I choose? But there are flights that once they take off will never turn back. And the question is no longer, am I wrong? But how many people are living like me, successful, admired, fulfilled, but lonely to the core? He once controlled hundreds of thousands of data processes every day, but a single wrong personal decision brought down the entire empire. Perhaps true power doesn't lie in what you can control, but in what you're wise enough not to touch. In your opinion, is the person in power the most talented, or the one who knows when to stop? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this silent portrait of power. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more stories about the wealthiest, most powerful, and most mysterious people in the world. Thank you for watching.